The early morning sun filtered through the towering oaks lining the quiet suburban street. Birds chirped their melodies, unaware of the storm brewing just a few steps away. Mia Harper adjusted the strap of her laptop bag as she walked toward her sleek black sedan parked near the curb. Her tailored blazer and heels radiated a confidence born of years spent navigating high-pressure environments. She had worked hard to reach her position, a respected politician with a growing reputation for advocating justice and equality. As she unlocked her car door, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The faint hum of a car engine, slurping as it approached, caught her attention. Mia glanced up to see a patrol car creeping toward her. It stopped abruptly, the flashing red and blue lights casting an ominous glow against the pristine white houses. Her pulse quickened, but she maintained her composure. "Morning, ma'am," said a tall, burly officer as he stepped out of the vehicle. His uniform was crisp, and his dark sunglasses reflected the morning light, obscuring his eyes. A second officer remained in the car, peering at Mia through the partially rolled-down window. "Good morning, officer. Is there an issue?" Mia asked, keeping her tone calm but firm. She had encountered situations like this before and knew better than to show fear. The officer, whose name tag read S. Walker, tilted his head, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. "Mind telling me what you're doing in this neighborhood?" Mia's brow furrowed slightly. "I live here. Is there a reason you're questioning me?" Walker's smirk faded, replaced by a hard, scrutinizing look. "License and registration, please." Mia hesitated, her instincts warning her this wasn't a routine stop. "With all due respect, officer, I haven't committed a traffic violation, nor am I operating my vehicle. Is there a specific reason you need my documents?" Walker's jaw tightened. "Ma'am, I won't ask again." The street seemed to hold its breath, the chirping birds now silent. Mia could feel the weight of her surroundings, the quiet gazes of neighbors peeking through blinds, the tension radiating from the patrol car, and the undeniable awareness of her identity as a black woman in this moment. But Mia wasn't just anyone. She had built her career on standing her ground, even in the face of intimidation. Reaching into her bag slowly, she retrieved her identification. As she handed it over, she said, "Officer Walker, I'd like to remind you that your actions today are being closely observed. My name is Mia Harper." Walker froze for a fraction of a second before taking the ID. The name seemed to register, but he quickly masked his reaction. "Wait here," he ordered, retreating to his patrol car. Inside, the second officer leaned closer to Walker. Their low voices carried hints of urgency and concern. Mia couldn't make out their words, but she could see Walker's posture change, rigid and tense, like someone caught in a misstep. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. Glancing down, she saw a message from her assistant. "Meeting at City Hall rescheduled. Let me know if you need anything." The irony wasn't lost on her. Here she was, a prominent advocate for justice, being treated as though she didn't belong in her own neighborhood. The minutes dragged on, each one a silent standoff. Finally, Walker emerged from the patrol car, his expression a mixture of defiance and unease. But before he could speak, another car, a sleek black SUV, pulled up behind the patrol vehicle. The tinted window rolled down to reveal a familiar face, one that instantly shifted the power dynamic in Mia's favor. Walker's eyes darted to the SUV, his composure faltering. Mia crossed her arms, waiting. Whatever happened next, she knew this encounter was far from over. The SUV's door opened, and a man in a sharp suit stepped out. His calm but commanding presence was undeniable. His name was Marcus Reed, a well-known political advisor who often worked behind the scenes but was no stranger to confrontation. Marcus had been Mia's trusted confidant for years, and his arrival was no coincidence. He walked over to Mia, his face composed but his eyes scanning the situation with practiced precision. "Miss Harper," he said, his voice loud enough to be heard by the officers, "I was in the area when I received your message. Is everything all right here?" Mia met his gaze with the slightest hint of relief, though her stance remained steady. "It seems Officer Walker here has some questions about my presence in my own neighborhood." Walker stiffened, clearly caught off guard by Marcus' appearance. His hand hovered near his radio as if contemplating calling for backup. The other officer in the car seemed less confident, his eyes darting between Marcus and Mia as though calculating the potential fallout. "Good morning, Officer Walker," Marcus said smoothly, turning to face him. "I trust there's a valid reason for detaining Ms. Harper. You're aware of who she is, I assume." Walker's jaw worked silently for a moment, the weight of the situation visibly sinking in. He glanced at the ID in his hand, then back at Marcus. We were conducting routine checks. There have been reports of suspicious activity in the area. Mia raised an eyebrow, her tone unwavering. Suspicious activity in broad daylight, in front of my own house. Walker hesitated, the cracks in his authority beginning to show. Marcus stepped closer, his calm demeanor now carrying a subtle edge. Officer, I'd advise you to tread carefully here. Ms. Harper is a public servant with a spotless reputation. Any further actions you take will need to be justified, legally and ethically. Walker's partner finally stepped out of the car, his movements hesitant. He was younger, less hardened, and clearly uncomfortable with how things were unfolding. Sir, he said quietly to Walker, maybe we should. I'm handling it. Walker snapped, cut him off. But the cracks in his confidence had widened. The balance of power had shifted, and everyone could feel it. Mia exchanged a glance with Marcus, silently acknowledging his unspoken message. Let him dig his own hole. As the tension thickened, a small crowd of neighbors began to gather at a distance. Most stood on their porches or peered out from behind fences, their curiosity and unease palpable. A few held up their phones, recording the encounter. Mia couldn't help but feel the weight of their gaze, knowing this moment could easily spiral out of control. Officer Walker, Marcus said, his voice cutting through the charged silence. Perhaps we should discuss this in a more formal setting. I'm sure your department would appreciate the opportunity to review the details of this encounter. Walker's face flushed. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, a voice called out from the crowd. That's Mia Harper. She's on the city council. The murmur of recognition rippled through the onlookers, and the energy of the situation shifted yet again. The younger officer leaned closer to Walker, his voice barely audible but insistent. We should let this go, it's not worth it. Walker gritted his teeth, clearly torn between his pride and the realization that he was losing control. He finally shoved Mia's ID back toward her, his movements jerky. You're free to go, he muttered, avoiding her eyes. Mia took her ID, her expression unreadable. I appreciate your understanding, she said, her tone carefully neutral. But as she turned to Marcus, she added, just loud enough for Walker to hear, this isn't over. Marcus nodded, his lips curving into a small, knowing smile. Together, they walked toward Mia's car, the weight of the encounter settling in but not diminishing her resolve. The SUV followed closely behind as Mia drove away, leaving the officers standing awkwardly in the street. The crowd slowly began to disperse, but the murmurs of speculation lingered. Walker's partner glanced at him, his unease evident. We're going to hear about this, aren't we? Walker didn't respond. He simply stood there, staring after the retreating cars, the implications of his actions sinking in. Inside her car, Mia gripped the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles white. Marcus's voice came through the Bluetooth speaker. Are you all right? I'm fine, she replied, though her voice carried a tremor of anger. This isn't the first time something like this has happened, but it's not going to keep happening. Not to me, not to anyone. Marcus's tone was calm but firm. We'll handle it, Mia. They overstepped, and they'll be held accountable. But we need to be strategic about how we proceed. Mia nodded, though she knew Marcus couldn't see her. Start gathering everything. I want statements from witnesses, video footage, anything we can use. This isn't just about me. It's about the message it sends to people who don't have the resources or the platform to fight back. You've got it, Marcus said. I'll reach out to our contacts at the media as well. If they think they can sweep this under the rug, they're sorely mistaken. Mia's thoughts raced as she drove, the adrenaline from the encounter still coursing through her veins. She had always known the challenges that came with her position. Being a black woman in politics was a constant balancing act of proving herself while facing scrutiny from all sides. But this felt different. This was personal, and it was a stark reminder of the systemic issues she had dedicated her career to dismantling. As she pulled into the driveway of her home, she couldn't help but glance around, half expecting another patrol car to appear. The quiet street seemed almost eerie now, the morning's tranquility replaced by a lingering tension. Marcus's SUV pulled in behind her, and he stepped out, phone in hand. I've already started reaching out to our legal team, he said as he approached. They'll be ready to act as soon as we have everything lined up. Mia nodded, her resolve hardening. Good, because this isn't just about today. It's about making sure this stops happening, here and everywhere else. The two of them stood in the driveway for a moment, the weight of the day settling in but not diminishing their determination. They both knew this was just the beginning of a much larger battle, one that would test their strength, their patience, and their unwavering commitment to justice. Mia stood in her living room, staring out the window. The hum of her thoughts drowned out the faint sounds of life outside, the occasional passing car, the distant laughter of children. The encounter replayed in her mind, each detail sharpening her anger. She had spent years advocating for systemic change, speaking out against racial profiling and abuses of power, and yet here she was, a victim of the very injustice she fought against. Marcus was on the phone in the kitchen, his voice low and steady as he coordinated with their legal team and media contacts. Mia could hear snippets of the conversation, words like statement, evidence, and strategy punctuating the otherwise quiet house. Her phone buzzed with messages from friends and colleagues who had already heard about the incident. Word spread quickly in her world, and she knew it was only a matter of time before the story gained traction. She sighed, rubbing her temples. The weight of being a public figure was something she had learned to carry, but days like this made it feel unbearable. Just as she sank into the couch, her phone rang. It was her mother. "Mia, baby, are you all right?" Her mother's voice was warm but laced with worry. "I'm fine, Mom," Mia replied, though the crack in her voice betrayed her. "I saw the video. Someone posted online already," her mother said. "You handled yourself so well, but I could see how angry you were. You have every right to be." Mia closed her eyes, the thought of her mother seeing her in that vulnerable moment adding another layer to her frustration. I'm so tired of this. It's exhausting having to prove I belong everywhere I go." Her mother's voice softened. "You've always been strong, Mia. But remember, you don't have to carry this fight alone. Let people stand with you." Mia nodded, though her mother couldn't see her. "Thanks, Mom. I'll be okay. I just need to focus on what comes next." After the call ended, Mia joined Marcus in the kitchen. He had a tablet on the counter, displaying the beginnings of a timeline they were piecing together. "Videos are already circulating," he said, gesturing to the screen. "Some of the neighbors recorded the whole thing. Public opinion is shifting in your favor, but we need to control the narrative." Mia studied the screen, the familiar weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. "What about the officers? Has anyone dug into their backgrounds yet?" Marcus nodded. "Walker has a history of complaints, mostly for unnecessary stops and aggressive behavior. Nothing that's led to serious consequences, though. His partner, Carter, is relatively new. No red flags on him yet." Mia frowned. "Walker's the one we need to focus on. This isn't the first time he's targeted someone like me, and it won't be the last unless we do something." Marcus hesitated. "I agree, but we need to be careful. If we push too hard without enough evidence, it could backfire. Let's build a strong case first." The sound of a car pulling into the driveway caught their attention. Mia peeked through the window and saw a familiar face stepping out. A journalist she trusted, Janine Ortiz. Janine had covered several of Mia's campaigns and was known for her honest reporting. "I called her," Marcus said. "Figured we could use someone who'd report the truth." Mia nodded, opening the door to greet Janine. The journalist wasted no time, her notepad already in hand. "Mia, I'm so sorry this happened to you. How are you holding up?" "I'm managing," Mia said. "But this isn't just about me. It's about holding people accountable and making sure this doesn't happen to anyone else." Janine nodded, her expression serious. "I want to help you get this story out there, but I need you to be honest with me. What happened out there today?" Mia recounted the encounter, her voice steady despite the simmering anger beneath her words. Janine took notes, asking questions to clarify details. As they spoke, Marcus showed her the videos and outlined the research they had already gathered on Walker. "This is compelling," Janine said, "but you're going to face pushback. People are going to say you're using your position to make this a bigger deal than it is." "It is a big deal," Mia said firmly. "If I don't speak out, who will? Walker has a pattern of behavior that's gone unchecked for too long. This is about justice, not just for me, but for everyone he's mistreated." Janine nodded. "All right, let me work on this. I'll draft something and send it over for your approval before publishing." After Janine left, the house felt quieter, but the tension remained. Marcus leaned against the counter, his arms crossed. "She's right, you know. The backlash will come. People will try to twist this into something it's not. I'm ready for it," Mia said, though she wasn't entirely sure she believed her own words. The truth was, she wasn't just fighting Walker. She was fighting a system that allowed people like him to thrive. As the day wore on, more pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Witnesses came forward, sharing their experiences with Walker. Some had stories eerily similar to Mia's, while others described more overt instances of harassment. The picture that emerged was one of a man who had operated with impunity for far too long. But with each new revelation, Mia felt the stakes rise. This wasn't just a battle for justice. It was a battle for her credibility, her career, and her safety. The deeper they dug, the more dangerous it became. By nightfall, the weight of the day pressed down on her, but she refused to let it crush her. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. And Mia Harper wasn't backing down.